Certainly. My first name is Steven, S-T-E-V-E-N. My last name is Atkinson, A-T-K-I-N-S-O-N.
Dr. Atkinson, where do you work?
I am employed by the state of Georgia. I work for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation at the medical examiner's office there. I am a forensic pathologist, also known as a medical examiner.
Excuse me. Are you licensed to practice medicine in the state of Georgia?
Yes.
Can you please tell the jury your educational background, what led you to the job that you're in now?
Certainly. My education, training, and experience is as follows. I received a bachelor's degree from Georgia Tech in Atlanta in 1996. I then received an MD from the Medical College of Georgia in Augusta, Georgia in 2000. For the next 5 years, I completed an anatomic and clinical pathology residency at the University of Florida in Gainesville. For the next year, 2005 to 2006, I completed a pathology fellowship at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. For the next year, 06 to 07, I was in private practice doing hospital-based pathology in Macon, Georgia. And then for the next year, 07 to 08, I completed a forensic pathology fellowship at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. So upon completion of that fellowship at Emory, I began my employment with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation in 2008, and I've been there ever since as a forensic pathologist.
Can you please describe to the jury what does a forensic pathologist do, and what is pathology?
Well, pathology literally means the study of disease. So most pathologists work in hospitals looking at biopsies or anything that's been removed in the OR or in the clinical lab. So when you have a blood draw, there's going to be a pathologist supervising the lab. Forensic pathology is a subspecialty of anatomic pathology, and a forensic pathologist performs autopsies. We are called upon to determine the cause and manner of death on people who have died. In the state of Georgia, if someone dies through violent means or under unknown circumstances, the coroner takes jurisdiction of the body and can certainly call upon a forensic pathologist to further examine that body and examine the body, which is what we do at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
You mentioned some training earlier. What does training consist of for pathology?
Well, to be a pathologist, you certainly need to graduate from college, graduate from medical school, and then after medical school, you complete a residency program, which is either in anatomic pathology or clinical pathology, or the vast majority are combined anatomic and clinical pathology, which is what I did. So once a residency in anatomic and or clinical pathology has been completed, then that person can certainly go out and practice independent pathology. Forensic pathology is just a small subspecialty that very few pathologists specialize in.
And do you complete continued education in this field?
Yes, I do.
Can you explain that to the jury? How many hours and what types of trainings?
In order to maintain a Georgia medical license, a licensee needs to complete at least 40 hours of continuing medical education every 2 year cycle. I am certainly board certified in anatomic pathology, clinical pathology, and forensic pathology, and in order to maintain that board certification with the American Board of Pathology, I need to have 70 hours every 2 year cycle to maintain the board certification.
What are your duties as a forensic pathologist?
As a forensic pathologist, we are a consultant to coroners throughout the state of Georgia. If a body falls under a coroner jurisdiction, then that coroner can decide that further examination of the body, such as an autopsy, needs to be performed. The coroner can either hire their own forensic pathologist, or they can use the state's forensic pathologist, because there's no back charge from the state to the county. So most coroners in Georgia tend to use the GBI as their forensic pathology consultation service for autopsies. Once the coroner calls the case in to the GBI, medical examiner's office, our office will either accept the case for autopsy or let the coroner know, hey, that's a straightforward natural death, or that we can't help, that does not need an autopsy. So about half the cases that are actually called in come in for autopsy. Once the body comes in for autopsy, we as the medical examiner will read the kind of the basic information that the coroner has given our office. If the body needs an x-ray, we'll x-ray the body, then we'll wheel the body out on the gurney into the autopsy suite. We'll examine the body as is. Typically there could be clothing, medical intervention, things of that nature. We'll remove all that. We'll take photographs as needed. And then we'll proceed with the autopsy, which I'm sure you've seen it in the movies. We make a Y incision in the torso to examine the organs in the torso. We make an ear-to-ear incision in the head, reflect the scalp, take the skull cap off, examine the brain, and finally we examine the neck organs. Once we have completed an autopsy, we will release the body to the next of kin, to the funeral home of their choosing. And an open casket funeral usually can still be done because clothing will cover the Y incision here, and the hair and the pillow will cover the incision in the scalp. Typically, 3 to 6 months later, we will release an autopsy report, which becomes a public record. And the final 2 lines of the autopsy report will mention the cause and manner of death.
How many autopsies have you performed?
I perform approximately 300 autopsies per year. So just with the GBI, approximately 5,000 in my career there over the last 16 plus years, and then another 250 in fellowship, forensic pathology fellowship, and another 75 during pathology residency. So over 5,000 autopsies at this point in my career.
Have you ever been admitted, have you ever testified as an expert in forensic pathology?
Yes, I have.
Do you know how many times?
It's approximately once a month, so I believe I'm up to about 165 times or so. The vast majority of those are in counties throughout the state of Georgia.
At this time, Judge of the State would tender Dr. Atkinson as an expert in autopsies and forensic pathology.
Okay. All right. Again, as I've told you, expert witness has training above those of normal folks, and therefore they can give opinion based upon that training experience. All right.
Thank you, Judge. Dr. Atkinson, did you have the opportunity to perform an autopsy on Gary Wayne Farris in 2018 and 2019?
Yes, I did.
And can you describe to the jury why this autopsy was different than the majority of the other autopsies you performed?
This autopsy was different because the body had been severely burned, and we had cremated fragments of tissue. It wasn't a whole entire body that came in a sealed body bag. We got boxes and bags of just fragments of tissue that had been severely burned, and the pieces were small, and so we can't get a height. Things that are limiting are we can't get a height, we can't get a weight, we can't get a hair length, a hair color, eye color. We can't examine the heart for coronary artery disease. So many things are limited when we're examining burned, cremated remains. So this case, we did have to have some expert consultation as well, because one of the things we're interested in is proving who this body is, and number 2, figuring out the cause of death.
Dr. Atkinson, did you, after your autopsy, did you put together a report that reflects your work on Gary Wayne Farris's remains?
Yes, I did. It's a 4-page PDF report electronically signed by me. I brought a copy of that with me today, and it can certainly be reproduced as many times as needed.
State moves to admit GBI DOFS 8, State's Exhibit GBI DOFS 8, his report.
All right, move.
Thank you, Judge. And did you also take photographs as you conducted this autopsy?
Photographs, we have a forensic photographer who works in the autopsy suite. So photographs were taken under my supervision at my direction. Yes, photographs were taken during this autopsy.
And at this time, the state moves to tender GBI ME 1 through 28.
All right, objections? No. All right, they're admitted.
Oh, I should say through 27. Thank you. All right, doctor, how did you know who the identity of the remains were in this case?
Well, I'll preface this by saying there are 3 ways to scientifically identify someone who cannot be visually identified. Those 3 ways are through dental comparisons, through fingerprint comparisons, or through DNA comparisons. These remains did have some burned, fragmented areas of the jaw with teeth. So we consulted with Dr. Frazier, who is a forensic odontologist, who actually looked at the morphology of the teeth and the fillings and the restorations of the remains, and compared those with Gary Farris's dental records that were known when he was living. And so when Dr. Frazier, the forensic odontologist, compared those two, there was similar morphology, and he certainly made the scientific identification that way.
Okay. Doctor, I want to walk through the photos that were taken during Mr. Farris's autopsy, okay? I'm pulling up GBI ME 1. And what is this number?
This is just a index shot. This shows the plaque with the case number. So all the subsequent photographs that will follow this plaque on the SD card in the camera will belong to this case. For the record, the case number is 2018-1016730.
Thank you, doctor. And I'm going to move to State's Exhibit GBI ME 2. What are we looking at here?
Okay, the body actually came to us in 3 different body bags, and within those body bags, there were fragments of tissue. So this is a body bag with the fragments of tissue. You can certainly see some long bones that are fragmented with some soft tissue that is adjacent to those bones.
I'm going to go ahead and scroll up. What are these bright spots here?
Those are going to be the restorations on the teeth. So that's a fragment of jaw.
Okay. What are we looking at over here?
Okay, those are some more soft tissue and bone fragments that were burned, that were placed in the body bag from the scene.
And when you talked about long bones, is that kind of this area?
That is correct. There at the bottom, you could see there was a nail, basically a construction debris. We see that not uncommonly in fires where other things other than the body are placed in the fire to burn. So there was just a nail that was within the fire pit debris.
What is this curvature here in these bones? Do you know
Okay, I'd have to correlate that, but that certainly could be it looks like a hand with some of the hand bones.
Okay. I'm sure we'll get to see those in a minute. I'm going to pull up GBI ME 3. Is this the same bag?
Yeah, this is going to be the same. This is a bag that has some of the skull, and then the piece at the very bottom was the fragment that had the bullet in it. So that's the fragment of some ribs with a bullet within the fragment.
Where my cursor is right here?
That is correct.
Okay, and then again, those are
teeth. Those are not bullets. Those are a crown, or a crown on top of a tooth is metal and will show up on an X-ray. It's a similar size and shape as a bullet, but it's not a bullet because it's a crown on the teeth.
What are we looking at here?
And this would have been the third
Sorry,
the third
let me
bag.
just put this on the record. GBI ME 4. Go ahead.
This would, like I said, there was three body bags. Each bag had smaller bags within it, or bags and or boxes. And so this is the third bag with more of the fragments of the burned remains of Mr. Farris. And you can see the bones and the soft tissue here as well.
All right, GBI ME5, same.
Same description, that is correct. This one clearly is a box because you can see the rectangular shape.
GBI ME6, what are we looking at
And
here?
now we've separated parts of the jaw and the fragment with ribs. So all of the white radio opaque fragments in the bottom of this x-ray are going to be the crowns on the teeth, but the fragment way in the top of this photograph is that rib fragment with the bullet. So you can see how they look similar on x-ray, but clearly the teeth are the dental fillings and the dental crowns and the dental restorations, and then the fragment away from the teeth and the jaws is the bullet that was near the ribs.
All right, moving to GBI ME7, is this the same items?
Yeah, this looks like more of a duplicate radiograph.
Okay. Now this is GBI ME8. What are we looking at here?
Okay, this is one of the body bags that has been opened, and you can see the cremated remains of Mr. Farris within this cardboard box. This white paper towel or paper blanket has been placed in the bag, and you can see how the remains have been burned, but they've been taken out of the fire, cooled, and then placed in the box. So you can see how they're white in areas and they're black in areas, as you would expect in something that has been burned.
Moving to GBI ME9, same
It's
box.
more of the same description.
And what are we looking at in GBI ME10?
Typically, we take a picture of the zipper pulls as the body bags are received, and we received Mr. Farris in 3 distinct body bags. So this is one of the body bags, and you can see the yellow tag is placed at the scene with a unique number on it. So this came to us as just Cherokee County UID, which stands for unidentified, and you can see our case number, the 2018-1016730 here on the body bag.
Now I'm going to show GBI ME11. What are we looking at in this?
And we're
photo?
looking at more burn debris of Mr. Farris within this cardboard box.
What are these large sections over here to the right?
Well,
you know?
those are going to be the soft tissue, the large pieces of skeletal muscle that get burned down and shrunken.
GBI ME12.
This actually looks like a piece of cranium or skull. You can see it's kind of bowl-shaped, like your skull would be.
Where my cursor is right here?
Correct.
Okay. GBI ME13, just the end of that same box. What are we looking at here?
This is that I'd have to see it up close, but that may be the rib piece with a bullet in it. But we took it out separately and then took some additional photographs. And we did not remove the bullet because we wanted to present that all to Dr. Gooding, the forensic anthropologist.
Okay, another bag.
This is one of the 3 bags again with the same description with the yellow tag with the unique number.
And that's GBI ME14. Okay, now we're on 15.
Right. Rather than a cardboard box for that one body bag, these actually were brown paper bags within the overall body bag. So we took pictures of the brown paper bags as they were received, and now we're going to take pictures of what is the contents of these brown paper bags.
Okay. And GBI ME16, GBI ME17.
That same description, more of the same. We're just documenting photographically what was received.
All right, and then in GBI ME18, is this the bag and then what was inside the bag?
That is correct.
Okay. What are those? Do we even know what those fragments may come from? How do you determine that?
These are just small fragments of bones and a little bit of soft tissue. We were able to save a portion of skeletal muscle to submit as evidence, but again, the forensic anthropologist, she was able to separate each one and say, these are skull bones, these are vertebral bones, these are rib bones, these are pelvic bones. these are long bones. But sometimes when you get to the bones in the ankles and the wrists and the hands and the feet, sometimes it's very difficult to tell because the burning has changed what they originally looked like.
All right, GBI ME 19, another bag.
More of the same, yeah. The quadrant B and E-4, some of these markings had to do with the scale of that was marked out at the scene. So if somebody wanted to say, well, what part of the fire pit was this bone found in, or what part of the fire pit was this piece of muscle found in, she could go back and tell that. But yeah, as far as a forensic pathologist, this is just the markings on the bag. So we're documenting that these fragments came in this bag, and the markings of the bag were this. And this clearly looks like a long bone that's been burned with some attached skeletal muscle here.
And that's GBI ME 20. Okay, going to 21.
Same description,
this
yes.
Looks like almost the same photo. Okay, 22. Another bag.
Another bag, yes.
Okay.
And same description. Burned fragments of bones and soft tissue. You can see there's black areas and white areas, and it's certainly consistent with a body that has been burned in a fire pit.
And then 24, unopened.
Same description.
25,
and
open.
same description. Just different markings on the brown paper bag.
Now, is this another possible long bone with muscle?
That's exactly what that is. Yes, long bone with muscle.
And when we say long bone, what is that? What could you be referring to?
We're talking about bones in the arms and the legs. So the humerus, the radius, the ulna, the femur, the tibia, and the fibula. Those are going to be your long bones.
Okay. And this is GBI ME 26. What are we looking at here?
This was the fragment. You can see there's two ribs and a bullet. So we kind of try to turn it and get all different perspectives showing where the bullet was and where the ribs were.
And is this the bullet right here, the red?
Yes, it
item?
is. This is a little out of focus. It looks like the camera is focusing on the 3-inch ruler behind the behind the tissue fragment, but you can certainly see the bullet, which is pointing back towards the camera, and that way you could estimate it you could call it a medium caliber jacketed bullet just by looking at it in this photograph.
And that's GBI ME 27. I want to walk through a little bit of your report. So when you are conducting your autopsy, where do you get the background information from scene recovery?
All of the information comes to us from the coroner, and in this case it was Coroner Sally Sims. So Coroner Sally Sims is essentially the customer or who we were writing the report for. So Miss Sims is at the scene. She's the one talking to police. She's the one getting the investigative information from the police. So she's going to report that information to our office.
So I want to go to page 2 of your report, down towards skeletal analysis. You have it divided into a couple of sections here: skeletal inventory, trauma analysis, and peri-mortem trauma. So what are you concluding under skeletal inventory?
Okay, let me just preface this by saying the dashed line at the top of page 2 through the dashed line at the mid portion of page 3. This is verbatim from Dr. Gooding's anthropology report. Since Dr. Gooding's anthropology report was crucial to the, quote, autopsy findings, in the skeletal analysis.
Judge, I object, and that's hearsay. That's not his report. He's copy and pasted another expert's report into his report, so that expert needs to testify about what that is.
That's fine, Judge. We'll move on. It's already, the report's admitted.
Right. He can testify as to other reports he uses in reaching his conclusions.
As an expert, yes, Judge. Okay, so did this assist Did Dr. Gooding's report assist in your conclusions in your report?
Yes, it did.
Okay. So going to the skeletal inventory, what does that mean under Dr. Gooding's section?
Basically, what Dr. Gooding stated was that the remains represented one individual. There were no duplicate bones. For example, if she found 2 right humeruses or humeri, then she would say, at minimum, we have 2 individuals. So looking at all the remains that we have just gone through in all of the states, 1 through 27 photographs, if somebody says, I think this is 10 people buried or in this fire pit, what Dr. Gooding is saying is, well, we have no duplicates, so, it represents one individual because there's no duplicates. There's no reason to believe this represents 2 people or 3 people or 4 people at this point.
And was that consistent with your observations of the remains?
Yes, it was.
And then moving down to the perimortem trauma, it discusses the projectile found.
Yes, and like I say, you've still got the picture on the TV screen.
Yes.
And this is a bullet within that's lodged in one of the fragments. So, as an anthropologist or as a pathologist, we can say that this Mr. Farris was shot at least one time. Could he have been shot more than that? Of course, because bullets can exit. Could there have been some other skeletal trauma that was not noticed because of the fire, distorted and made that trauma unavailable for us as the examiner to see? Absolutely. Can you get shot and not have any bone trauma? Of course, you can get a gunshot wound that only hits soft tissue. But what we know is what we can see in the remains. So from these remains, there's at least one gunshot wound, and this is going to be the end of the pathway. I clearly state out in my report that the entrance wound cannot be found, the pathway of what exact organs it hit cannot be found, and the range of fire cannot be assessed because there's no way to assess for stippling or things like that when we don't have any skin to examine with an entrance wound.
And when you say stippling, I know we don't have that in this case. Is that just a way to determine how close the shooter was?
That is correct, yes.
And so her conclusion about the location of the projectile is, did you also conclude that same location with your observations of the bullet here on the screen?
Right. As we saw from the previous photograph, you saw the 2 ribs. So you know the gunshot wound is in the torso somewhere.
And then I'd like to go down to the summary, your summary of findings. You've already covered some of this, but it states that you were unable to assess for the entrance wound.
That is correct.
Okay. And the range of fire, which you just described, and the direction of the wound path. Can you describe that to the jury, the wound path?
Certainly. Typically, when we autopsy someone who has been shot, we're able to say, here's the entrance wound, and then we assess for soot and stippling. Clearly, there's soot everywhere because he's been in a fire pit. So we say where exactly on the body the entrance wound is. The entrance wound we're going to assess for soot and for stippling to see if it's intermediate or close or contact range. Then we're going to assess where it went. So a typical gunshot wound may go through, for example, a typical gunshot wound of the torso may involve the skin and soft tissue of the chest. It may involve a rib. It may involve one or both lungs. It may involve the heart. It may involve the spine. It may involve the spinal cord. There's lots of things that a bullet could hit in the torso. And then the final thing we're going to say is there an exit wound or is there a bullet? So it's half the gunshot wounds we autopsy and we describe exit, half don't. And the final thing we'll say when we describe a gunshot wound is the direction. Is it front to back? Is it left to right? Is it upward, downward? We'll always try to describe it in a three-dimensional direction using up, down, right, left, front, back. with the body in anatomic position. So sometimes that can help the police investigators try to get the position of the body when the gunshot wound was sustained, but certainly at autopsy we can't determine the position of the body when the gunshot wound was sustained, even if we know the direction through the body with the body in anatomic position.
And then under your comment and opinion, you state there was extensive postmortem thermal damage, which made further characterization of this gunshot wound difficult. Is that essentially what you just described?
That is correct, yes.
And the reasoning for that. And then your job is to determine cause and manner of death. Can you describe what cause of death means to the jury?
Certainly. Cause of death can be anything listed in a text fashion. Heart disease, stroke, pneumonia, blunt trauma, gunshot wound, sharp force trauma. So the cause of death may or may not tell you exactly what the manner of death is, but I listed the cause of death as a gunshot wound of the torso based on the autopsy findings coupled with the police investigation. Go ahead.
You were going to move on to manner of death, I imagine.
Well, I was going to move on to manner of death, and there's basically 4 manners of death for a death certificate, and each death can be categorized as one of those 4, and I'll list those as follows: natural death, accidental death, homicide, or suicide, and they're basically self-explanatory. A natural death is a death through disease process. An accidental death is something that is inadvertent and untoward and unexpected. If you fall off a ladder and hit your head and die of head trauma, that would be an accidental death. Homicide and suicide, or death at the hands of another, is homicide, and then death at your own hands is suicide. If for some reason you cannot put it into one of those 4 categories, you could certainly use undetermined or pending investigation or something of that nature. But here in this case, I listed the manner of death as homicide because we had police investigation that there was no evidence that this was a natural death. There was no evidence that this was an accidental death, and there was no evidence that this was a suicidal death. So it was apparent that he was shot by another individual. Therefore, we relayed to the coroner to sign the death certificate as cause of death, gunshot wound of torso, and manner of death, homicide, because that was the reasonable conclusion to make given the facts that we had.
Thank you, Doctor. You testified earlier that you did not remove this projectile?
That is correct. We left it in there for Dr. Gooding to remove during her further examination. So Dr. Gooding helped with the recovery at the scene. Then we got the body, which is where all the pictures were taken. And then Dr. Gooding got to examine the remains again in a controlled setting, with adequate light on a table in a laboratory, because it's a whole lot easier to remove or to examine the remains in a controlled laboratory setting rather than out in the field when I believe the fire was still smoldering.
Your Honor, at this time the state would move to admit State's Exhibit GBI ME28, which is the bullet from the fragment.
Right, any objection? All right, so move.
Dr. Atkinson, that's all I have for you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Good afternoon, Dr. Atkinson. My name's Michael Ray. I represent Ms. Farris. You're a day early, so I don't have my questions printed.
Can you repeat that?
I was just saying that you're a day early, so I don't have my questions printed out for you. So give me just one sec, okay? So, you can't tell me, as the medical examiner, whether or not Gary Farris died as a result of a gunshot wound to the heart, can you?
There was no heart available for examination. Yeah, I've made it clear that the pathway, the entrance wound, is unable to be assessed due to all of the postmortem thermal damage.
So you can't say that any vital organ in Gary Farris's body was hit by a bullet? Yes or no?
That is correct.
Okay, because you can't tell me where the bullet went in, it didn't go out, and you can't assess the pathway of the bullet, right?
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay. All right. Now, you also, on direct, you have stated that y'all consulted with numerous experts, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. We consulted with Dr. Gooding, the forensic anthropologist, for examination of the bones, and then we consulted with Dr. Gordon Frazier for forensic odontology consultation, who confirmed using dental records and the remains that this was indeed Mr. Farris.
Okay. And is that the only two experts that you spoke to?
I believe those are the only two consultations that our office did. That is correct.
Are there any other medical examiners at the GBI?
Yes.
How many?
Currently, there are 15 medical examiners statewide, and we have 3 offices, one in Metro Atlanta, one office in Macon, and one office in Savannah.
Okay. Did any of those other medical examiners look at these remains?
That's a difficult question to answer because the follow-up would be, well, who looked at it? So in our normal course of business, we have an autopsy suite that is open. We have 8 stations, and there's typically up to 3 medical examiners performing autopsies at once. And we also have forensic pathology rounds where other doctors will see what else is going on in the lab. So potentially everyone in the office that was there that day would have seen these remains. That is correct.
Okay. Well, and you just said something interesting. You said this day. So did your examination of these remains take a day?
The actual examination of the remains and taking the photographs, yes, that was all done in one day.
Okay. Did you take those photographs?
Like I mentioned to the counselor earlier, we have a forensic photographer in our office, so these photographs were taken under my supervision at my direction.
So the answer is no, but you were there.
That is correct.
All right. And what day were these photographs taken and the remains reviewed by you?
I'm going to refer to my autopsy report. That would have been on July 6th, 2018.
Okay. 2018. So on that day, you did the photographs and you looked at it, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Then why did it take till June 12th, 2019 to issue your report?
Again, typically we're going to wait until the final police investigation, and it took an extra few weeks to get him ID'd, his ID confirmed, and that's an average turnaround time. That appears to be 9 to 10 months, which that's not uncommon for a complicated case. That's par for the course.
You had the forensic dental stuff. You had that by July, right? 2018?
I believe Dr. Frazier's report, which I did bring with me, his report was dated November 8th, 2018.
Okay, so you had it at least by November.
That is correct.
But did you also just receive like a letter from the dental forensic people saying, hey, I think this is Gary Farris?
I'm looking at the dates on these, and it looks like the forensic anthropology report was dated May 31st, 2019. So it looks like my report came out like 2 weeks after the forensic anthropology report came out.
Okay, that's not what I asked you though. I asked you about the dental stuff. Like, did you get a letter from the dentist who examined it saying, hey, I've looked at everything, it looks like it's Gary. It's not an official report, it's just a letter?
Right, the letter was dated November 8th, 2018.
Okay, so as early as November, you had these remains, you knew it was Gary, and then we're waiting till June 2019 to issue your report. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. So, also, and you had brought this up with Ms. Frankish, the first part of your report, not the first part, the part where it says scene recovery introduction, that is verbatim copy and paste from Dr. Gooding's report.
That is correct.
Okay. Now, Dr. Gooding is a forensic anthropologist, and if you don't know, just say I don't know.
Yes, Dr. Gooding is a forensic anthropologist.
Okay. And you're a forensic pathologist.
That is correct. I am a forensic pathologist.
Dr. Gooding can't make determinations of cause and manner of death. Like you can.
Again, your question is difficult to answer, but I can say that the coroner consulted our office in order for me as the assigned forensic pathologist for this case to determine the cause and manner of death such that the coroner could sign the death certificate.
Okay. But the coroner had to wait for your report to come out to do that, correct?
The coroner is independent. The coroner consults us and can either agree or disagree with anything we say. They just consult us for an opinion.
So the coroner actually, she doesn't need any permission from you. She could issue a death certificate for whatever she wanted to?
That is correct. Absolutely.
Okay, so if she testified earlier and was saying she had to wait on you, that's not exactly correct, right?
The coroner can choose or not choose to consult any forensic pathologist. The coroner, most wise coroners will consult a forensic pathologist to assist them in figuring out why someone died to get an accurate cause and manner of death. But does the coroner have to consult the GBI? No, of course not.
Okay. Now, the remains when they came in, I know you said you were there for photography, but for making your final determinations in the case, did you actually go through all of the remains?
Yes, I did.
You did? Okay. Okay. Moving to your report. You're unable to assess the location of the entrance wound. You testified to that.
That is correct.
All right. You're unable to assess the range of fire.
That is correct.
Unable to assess direction of a wound path.
That is correct.
And you are also unable to assess any type of diseases or anything like that due to the condition of the remains.
That is correct.
And also due to the condition of the remains, you couldn't perform any types of toxicology analysis either.
Again, we collected some skeletal muscle, and I do not believe it was tested. Certainly toxicology could have been if needed, but I do not believe any was done.
Who would make that determination? Obviously, you could have made that determination to do that type of testing, but could the prosecutor's office or the sheriff's office, could they have asked you to make that determination or do that test?
If someone had wanted some toxicology performed, they certainly could have called our office and requested some toxicology be performed on skeletal muscle, yes.
Okay.
But typically for gunshot wound homicides and suicides, our office typically does not perform any toxicology unless it's asked for by another interested party, whether it be the district attorney, the police, etc.
Okay. Moving on, I want to talk about cause of death for a little bit. Can you tell the jurors what hemorrhage means?
Hemorrhage is just bleeding. Anytime a blood vessel gets disrupted, blood will come out of the vessel and into the surrounding soft tissues.
So if, for example, I got shot and I'm bleeding, that would be a hemorrhage?
Yeah, typically if someone gets shot, there will be hemorrhage along the wound path of the bullet. That is correct.
Okay. And that's only true if the individual is alive at the time they are shot, correct?
In order for bleeding to happen, the heart has to be pumping. So yes, the person has to be alive for bleeding to occur.
All right. And the soft tissue that you examined where the bullet was found, you didn't see any evidence of hemorrhage?
It was too burned to assess for hemorrhage, like I mentioned in the report. But so the answer is yes, I did not see evidence of hemorrhage.
Okay. So with that, based on the logical assumption of what hemorrhaging is, if you didn't see any, you actually can't say to a medical certainty that the bullet entered that soft tissue while Gary Farris was alive.
That is correct.
Okay. Now, Also, going on to the wound path and the direction. If you can't determine the wound, I guess we'll back up. Can you tell the jury what a wound path is? I don't know if Ms. Rankin, I didn't hear her say that.
A wound path is going to be what the bullet hits along the pathway from the entrance wound to either the exit wound or the lodgement of the bullet. For example, skin and soft tissue, skeletal muscle, bone, such as ribs, lungs, heart, aorta, soft tissue in the back, things of that nature. So the wound path is going to be a list of everything the bullet hit from when it entered the body to when it either exited the body or lodged somewhere.
And in this case, since you don't have a wound path, the only thing that you can say is that it's in that soft tissue. That is correct? You can't say that it hit any bone or skeletal structure or any internal or vital organs.
Right, yeah. The fragments that we examined were so burned that we could not see an entrance wound, a wound path. All we saw is the bullet.
Okay. So you would agree with me that if you can't determine what was hurt, then you can't say that that was the cause of death.
Again, if you're only examining the body, as a medical examiner, we have to we have to get the investigation and the remains. So we have to look at the entire case and come to a reasonable conclusion. And it was a reasonable conclusion that a gunshot wound is what led to Mr. Farris's death. And that was the opinion, that was my opinion.
Okay. Even though you can't tell anybody of actually how he would have died, even if he was alive when he was shot.
That is correct.